Let's get into it. Coach Colin News here. We got Tucker Carlson, and then we have Ali Stuckley. I'm sorry if I said that name right. Those are two clips I'm going to be showing you, but let's start right away. Family, nation, God. God, nation, family. God, family, nation. That's the order that I would put it in myself. Now, if you take away God out of the equation, what do you have left for the people? Well, the state becomes God. And if the state becomes God, well then your inalienable rights all of a sudden aren't God-given, and you don't have them no matter what. Who would want that type of thing to happen? Let's get into that. Tucker Carlson is interviewing a pastor. They're talking about Christian nationalism, which is the new buzzword, right? It's something that they're probably going to only throw at white people for a while, white Christian nationalists, and it's going to be seen as going right alongside MAGA, and black people aren't going to get branded as that until they start standing up with the same values as the white Christian nationalists, and then there'll be the black face of white Christian nationalists. It's a whole cycle that the mainstream media tends to go through. But for now, they're just trying to single out Christian nationalists. Soon enough, it'll start to just get pointed directly at white men, and then it'll expand. It's a whole system they have, So that's what the pastor's talking about, Tucker Carlson. He gets into this conversation where he starts talking about, and again, this is not a religious conversation, really. This is more about sovereignty, right? So he starts talking about what happens when God is pulled out of the equation in regards to a country. He goes down some very interesting paths. I want you guys to listen to that. And then also we have Ali. She's going to be talking about that. Ali Beth Stuckley. She's going to be talking about what that also means. Okay? I want to get into that real quick. Listen to this first clip.
But then on MSNBC just a few weeks ago, there was one of the talking heads there that said anybody who believes that rights come from God and not from Congress and not from the Supreme Court is a Christian nationalist, right? So anybody who, making Thomas Jefferson,
right,
a Christian nationalist, endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. So anybody who believes that, according to the left, is a Christian nationalist. And there is a developed set of arguments in defense of that phrase that can be, I think, pointed out in short order. Trying to defend other things they call you is like putting lipstick on a pig. It's not going to be any good.
No.
All right. But this is something that people can say, oh, I love my nation and I'm a Christian. Why can't these?
Well, that's how I feel about it. But
right.
I don't know what it is. So how would you define it?
So it's, I think, very simple. If there is no God above the society, if there is no God above the state, take God away.
Yes.
The state is God.
Yes.
Okay? If there is no God above the state is God. The state becomes God. And it assumes the prerogatives of deity. Cameras at every intersection, aping omniscience,
yes,
omnipresence, in big brothers watching you.
Control of your mind.
Control of your mind. They want to control absolutely everything. Every keystroke, they want to control everything because they're aspiring to deity. The reason they're aspiring to deity is because they don't recognize any God above them. Our current rulers don't believe in God, but they do believe in the devil. Right? All right. And their belief in the devil is why they want to ascend the sides of the north. They want to be as the Most High. That was the initial temptation in the garden. You shall be as God.
Yes.
Okay. So our current rulers are very ambitious, and they want to aspire to that height. We don't want to resist them in the name of Christ, because we don't want to launch another series of interminable religious wars.
Right.
Okay. Because we don't want the Muslims fighting with the Jews, fighting with the Christians, fighting with, all of that. All right. So that's a most reasonable question. When they say which God, and here's the answer to your question. The Christian nationalist is the one who's willing to answer that question and speaking into the microphone. The true God, the living God, the one who exists.
Yes.
Not the God on our money,
how do you go back?
Now, I will say with what he just said, I mean, try to, whatever faith you are, try to think of, because right away when he says that, who's willing to say the God, I can think of many, many men who practice Islam who are willing to say into any microphone, the top of their lungs, on top of buildings, they're willing to scream about Allah. They're willing to scream about their God. So I will position this for whoever's watching is anyone who's devoutly religious is always willing to talk about who is God. And they're always willing to talk about how that God is righteous and how that God is above them and how the things they do on this earth are to please him. And if you don't believe in God, think of whatever, okay? Just think of your meditation, your higher self, whatever you want to think about. But I focus on this clip because it is very true. It doesn't seem like the people in power have much of a interest in God. And when I go over and talk about woke culture, they definitely don't have interest in God. Many of them are atheists, some of them Satanists, not all, but there's a few that I've seen and encountered where they're talking about Hail Satan and all that stuff. So they really don't have an interest in God. They don't have an interest in Allah, in Muhammad, in Jesus, God, Hashem. They don't have an interest in these religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. They have no interest in it. In fact, they reject it completely. And in fact, if you are devoutly religious, they see you as brainwashed. So it is interesting when he talks about the elite aspiring to deity, because you do see that. And he brought up something very interesting, because this is the thing. I've had this conversation many times before in regards to the elite, but also in regards to AI, right? There is a certain divineness that it seems like technology is trying to imitate, or the people who are building the technology are trying to emulate, right? It seems as though they're not only trying to just build an artificial brain in regards to artificial general intelligence, AGI, but they're also trying to build a soul. They're trying to at least build the notion of a soul and feelings in these machines to us. They're trying to make us feel like these are just going to be just like people. Joe Rogan says it all the time. It's like, this is just another life form. I don't even call it artificial anymore. And it's like, but it is. It seems like there's something there where these people are trying to get us to go along with the whole thing. Again, I have to bring up Joe because he often says, oh, everybody's going to have these brain implants. Klaus Schwab said the same thing. Oh, everybody's going to have these implants. Who's not going to have it? It's going to be like not having a cell phone or an email address. How long are you going to hold out? Well, there's a lot of people. Now, again, I don't want to blanket, but there's a lot of people who are devoutly religious who are not getting on board with this. They are not going to get it. It doesn't matter if all of a sudden they seem like cavemen to these new artificial beings that are running around. They're not going to do it. They're not going to go along with this. I'm one of those people. I'm going to the forest. And if they come to the forest, I'll go deeper and I'll go deeper. And I'll take my whole family with me. So it's just interesting that as they try to build AI, they are trying to build God. And when we talk about God and Satan, there is an artificial building something like AI, something that is godlike, would be the embodiment of Satan, because that this thing will be like God. And that is everything, as far as I know. I don't know how other religions talk about it, but that is what Satan wants. He wants to be exactly like God. He wants to have dominion over all people, just like God. So when he said that thing about the cameras, putting cameras everywhere, right? It's mimicking God. God is supposed to be all seeing and he's everywhere. He sees what you're doing at all times. They're trying to mimic that as they keep track of, as he said, your keystrokes, what you're doing on your phone, what you're saying, where you're walking, where you're driving. Now that we have electric cars, where you're driving, I'll stop the car when I see fit. I'll turn it on when I see fit. I'll allow you to go to this place. I won't allow you to go to this place. And sometimes you'll have to stay home. It's all very much something trying to imitate God. And I can't point at one politician, just like I can't point at one woke person, but it seems like the movements, these, and again, I'm not going to position anyone who's on the right as godly. They're not gods. I'll say that right now. But I do see a lot of these left-leaning governments, whether it's in Brazil, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the US, they do all seem, and China as well, they do all seem to be imitating God, aspiring to deity. I just find that very interesting. So when you remove God, like he's talking about, you're removing God, but you're also allowing them to put themselves in the place of God, but you're also taking away sovereignty. Your freedom, your liberty is something that is given to you when you're born. You can move around. You can run out of the house. You can run up the street. You can run down a hill. You can do what you see fit. When all of a sudden God is out of the picture, now all of those things are subject to the scrutiny of man who is, again, aspiring to deity. Now, I'm going to have Ali say some things right now because this also touches on exactly what I'm talking about. Let's get into it.
On a lot of the things that he says, but apparently this is, for the first time in all of history, in all of the history of America, very problematic and scary and tyrannical. So here is what Heidi said on MSNBC just a few days ago.
The one thing that unites all of them, because there's many different groups orbiting Trump, but the thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalist is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God.
Oh my gosh. That is so radical. That is so extreme. That is some new modern idea that we just came up with. That it's brand new information, in the words of Phoebe. Let me remind you of what the Declaration of Independence says. Let me just read it verbatim for you. We hold these truths to be self-evident, the founders said, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, Miss Heidi is a Polk Award winner. She is a Pulitzer finalist. She is Politico's national investigative correspondent. And she is apparently a smart person. She is apparently an intellectual, somewhat of a historian. And she says the scary part of Christian nationalists is that we believe our rights come from God. Yeah, that's why any of us are here in the United States. The United States does not exist apart from that idea. So if that idea that our rights come from God is Christian nationalist, then the founders were Christian nationalists and America is a Christian nationalist nation. Is that what you are admitting, Heidi? Is that what you are saying? The truth is, the idea that our rights come from God is why she is allowed to say stupid things like that legally. Because we have the inherent right, the founders believe, to free speech and to worship who we want to worship and within some parameters, how we want to worship. We have the right to defend ourselves. We have the right to property. We have the right, first and foremost, to life, because without the right to life, neither liberty nor happiness exist. And the reason why all of these have to come from God is because if they come from man or they come from government, then they're completely arbitrary. They're no longer innate. They no longer really belong to us. They belong to the government. And therefore, the government, if they are the giver of those rights, the arbiter of those rights, they then have the authority, the power to give them or to take them away as they see fit. But we believe, the founders believed, this was core to the creation of America, that only God, the author, has the authority to give us our rights, and therefore they cannot be arbitrarily given or taken away. That is core to what America is. But again, going...
Very true. You see what I mean? As soon as you start playing around with God shouldn't be in the conversation in regards to a nation, or even in regards to just a population of people, right? It gets kind of dicey. It gets kind of hairy. It gets very slippery. Because again, somebody will install themselves as God. I mean, even think about the way things are right now. We don't have kings and queens, but even still, I'll call it the politician class of people and celebrity class of people kind of just installed themselves as royalty. You know, if you look at what royalty was, and you look at how they act and how they act to us and how a lot of us act to them, respond to them, you'd see that they kind of just put themselves in the place of royalty. That's why when you're a politician, you never have to go back to public life. You never have to go back to a regular job. Same thing with a celebrity. You're just so far removed. You just acquire that wealth and all that power, and you remove yourself so far from the working class people, from the general population. So, if they're willing to install themselves into what seems like royalty, which is not, it's not, but it does seem like that, the way they act, how much money they have and everything like that, in comparison to the rest of us, then why wouldn't they take it a step further and put themselves in God's place? And how do we argue that's not what they're doing? You know, so many times it's been talked about in the conversation of Neuralink and AI and artificial general intelligence. What are they going to give it to everybody? They're going to give it to everybody? Everybody's going to have this godlike intelligence? Who's going to control that? Someone's going to control that. And again, very artificially trying to imitate God. You know, God's supposed to be around all of us and in the minds of all of us, pushing us towards good things, hoping, giving us free will, but hoping that we choose the good things. You know? They're kind of simulating that. They're going to be all around us. They're always going to be able to see us. They're going to be inside our minds for those of us that take these implants. They really are aspiring to deity. I never thought of it that way. But when you look at it, it's really what it is. That's why there's no what is a regular person to a god? A god wouldn't consider anything that a regular person has to say. And when have you heard politicians considering any elite class? When did they consider what the people want at all? You know, Tucker's talked about it many times. Go look at what the government thinks the top 3 things are they should be dealing with, and then look at you and your community and what the top 3 things are to you. The top thing within the nation is the border, but that's not the top thing to the current government in charge. In fact, it's the opposite. Right? So they're not listening, because why would they? If they're inspiring to deity, why would they listen to you? Why would they care what you have to say? Why would they care what you think? You're going to do what you're told. You know? The quote was, "You will have nothing and be happy." It wasn't, "We hope you will be okay with nothing and we will check to see whether or not you're happy." That wasn't the quote. You will, and you will be happy. Just interesting little train of thought that popped up for me when I heard that. You know, and I invite you to start thinking about that. Because right now, with what Ali was talking about, and with what the pastor was talking about, they are, and I think they were talking about one and the same thing when they were talking about the MSNBC clip. I think they were talking about the same person, this Heidi woman. They are now slowly trying to demonize. What was it before? Demonizing people who were racist, right? And then slowly that became demonizing people that are white because they're so privileged, you know? Then slowly it became demonizing people that support Trump because all of a sudden there was white and black people of all colors that supported Trump. So it's just demonized Trump supporters in general. Now all of a sudden there are people with Christian values, religious values. You'll find these three religions that we talk about, a lot of them have the same values. There's other things, obviously, because these books are very big and there's a lot in them. But at the core, when you see the devout, good people of each religion, at their core, they're really after the same thing, you know? And I've seen it. I've grown up around devoutly religious Jewish people who are good people. And I've also been around a lot of people who are devout Muslims and seen how they act. And I've been around for the past few years, I've been around devout Christians. At the core, it's very, very similar of what they want. At the end of the day, they want to please God. They acknowledge that there is something above them. And if there is an entity like state in front of them saying, you're going to do this, 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 and this, and it doesn't correlate with what's up there, they say no. All three religions go, no, we won't do that. That becomes a really big problem. So interesting now that all of a sudden there are people of religious faiths, Christianity mainly right now, that are now being demonized. Those values are now being demonized. I don't know. Just something to look out for. I don't have to worry, though. I'm black, right? Black people can't be racist. I can't be a Christian nationalist. I don't fit the profile, right? For now. Until they change their mind. Because that's how it works in the party, you know? Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, share, and let me know what you think about this whole concept. Do you see that in any politicians? Do you see that in the elite right now? Do you feel like they're aspiring to be deity? Have you noticed that? I'm out.